moving forward every day. Jesus, I just let him lead the way every second, every minute, every hour of the day. I'm moving with Jesus every day. 24/7 with Jesus every day. 24/7.
Where do doctors and surgeons go when they require their own medical attention? Where do psychiatrists, psychologists, or even counselors go to when they require psychiatric evaluation? Where do ministers go when they need ministered or being ministered onto? Some say that ministers are independent of pain or somehow are immune to pain. And if they do experience pain, if they have privileged access to God, the God of all comfort, who can comfort them in the midst of their plight. Well, I'm sure Andy Manzano will beg to differ because he has had his own bout of pain, his own experience of painful, distressing moments, which he wants to share with us today as we continue our series on coping with loss. And today we're looking at the preacher and his pain. Thank you, Pastor Manzano. You're accustomed being seen on the pulpit, but now you're in the pew, but more specifically next to me, speaking about your own personal experience. Yes. Maybe to give some context to our discussion, please share with us, how long have you been in ministry and what brought you into ministry?
I have been a minister with the Seventh Adventist Church for over 20 years.
Okay.
Began in 1998,
okay,
after I graduated from USC,
right.
CUC then.
Mm-hmm.
How I came to be a minister of the gospel is quite interesting. I really did not have a personal desire to be a pastor, per se.
Mm-hmm.
I had a passion for preaching.
Right.
And I went to get my degree, study for theology on the basis of giving me more tools for preaching.
Right.
I said once, Lord, if you want me to be in ministry, then let them call me.
Mm-hmm.
I put that out as my prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I waited.
Mm-hmm.
I waited. I know other people would have gone to interviews and made applications.
Right.
I told the Lord, if this is to be, I would be called because it is not something I wanted to be in.
Right.
While others thought I should, go into ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, one day I got a phone call from the administration and I was offered to begin working as an intern pastor.
Wow.
And I went home pretty scared, if I would say so.
Right.
It was shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And, the rest is history.
Right. But why was it shocking? Why was it scary for you? Because you did send out that sort of SOS to Jesus.
Yeah.
Lord, if you want me, you call me. Now he has called you and you're scared.
Maybe I put that out hoping that I would not be called. because you usually you would apply.
Right.
So
right.
Maybe I was telling the Lord I don't want to be.
Right.
I expect they will not call.
Do you have any regrets now? Now that you've been in ministry for 20 years?
No regrets. I've had testing times, but really no regrets.
Okay.
God has provided, and revealed God's self to me in so many ways, in so many experiences.
Did you at any time feel like quitting the ministry?
There were times. There were times I questioned.
Right.
I questioned it. There were times when the experiences were so tough, all around, personally, ecclesiastically, administratively, your relations with with others, and even your own questioning your own self. You know,
You have been privileged to travel many places around the world, and you have brought comfort. You have brought a lot of joy to many countenances. I myself could testify that a lot of your messages have impacted my life in a very, very peculiar way, and it tells me that God has gifted you. Yet, in the midst of the gift, there are some who believe, or you could maybe testify that in the midst of the giftedness, there were times where you felt uncomfortable. There were times when you had your own distresses to deal with. Let's deal with it in a general term. Is it true that ministers ought not to experience down moments? And I know it's a trick question because there are those who may have their own answers to that. But I say that because you are in contact with God and you deliver messages that tells me, and I'm sure many could attest, that you have a deep connection with God. Do you have down moments? And is it right to say that the minister ought not to have these down moments? And that's something of the enemy. And he should dismiss that forthwith. And there's something wrong with his spirituality. So I'm asking a few things one time, but the general question is, do ministers, or is it right for ministers to experience those distressful moments?
I don't know if it's a right and wrong approach.
Right.
Is it right or or how they relate to it? I don't know if that's the approach. I take the matter of experience as real. Life is real, and the world is not perfect. So pastors, ministers are human beings. They have real life experiences too. I describe certain things in the light of pain and grief and difficulties. I just came from my class, and one of the statements I would use to describe these things, I tell my students, especially with dealing with grief and death, that grief, the experience of grief, does not negate faith. And faith does not absolve you from grief.
And that's where I'm going with the question.
Faith, believing in God does not insulate you from the experience of pain. I believe that belief in God is access to a strength that takes you through pain.
Right.
But it doesn't negate pain.
Right.
You know, Paul is the writer who makes the statement that I sort of envision my life in. And he made a statement in 2 Corinthians 12 and 9 when he prayed to God 3 times for a pain. He calls it a thorn in his flesh, a discomfort that he wanted removed. It was so, disturbing to him that he wanted deliverance, and God told him that he would not remove it.
Right.
And he told him, my grace is sufficient for you. That is, you must bear the pain,
Right.
but you will have strength to bear the pain. Right. So if the Apostle Paul, the model pastor after Jesus, is telling us he had pain, that he would want it removed.
And the reason why I phrase it deliberately with the right and wrong, and I understand what your response is, why your response is the way it is that there are some who perhaps claim that trouble comes upon people because of their lack of connectivity with God. Take the case of the John 9, the guy born blind. Who sinned? His mother or him or whatever. And as such, a minister going through difficult times, something has to be wrong with him, especially when he is ministering. And my question to you really is, have you been subject to pain or painful experiences while ministering, while in ministry?
If we look at ministry in its totality, I believe ministry is a journey of pain. In fact, the painless moments are breaks that you get on the journey. You know, you have it is a painful experience. It is painful ministering to people in pain.
Okay.
Just knowing that even while you minister, you cannot take the pain away from them. Seeing your loved ones in pain is painful.
Right.
And your own pain. We have circumstances where you encounter sickness, you encounter death, loss. So to claim that we don't have pain is one thing. The other thing is to claim that we should not admit pain.
Right.
It's another thing.
So let's get personal, up close and personal. Have you experienced the pain of loss in your life?
I have experienced loss, and by death, that is.
That's right.
Frequently, to be honest. My biological family, we had 9 deaths in 7 years.
Wow.
Since 1989.
Wow.
You know, my sister, my father, or rather my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, my grandmother, my sister's son. So I know about the pain of losing a loved one.
How has that affected your life? What changed your life?
Changed, I can't say change. I could describe what I went through.
Right.
It began before I was into pastoral ministry and into pastoral ministry. And I've explained this to a few folks many times, and I remember one time when my sister passed, my mother passed, my father, my sister, my brother. When my brother died, I was at the funeral service. We had just buried my brother, eldest one. And I was looking at my siblings. Trying to be rational, analytical in a crazy moment. And I'm looking at them and I'm counting, you know. This is at the graveside. I'm counting and I'm saying, you know, we will have another funeral in the future. And if I don't die and they don't bury me, I will bury one of them. And my family is a large family. My parents had 13 children. Wow. Okay, so it's a lot of grief. So I am asking.
After a lot of pleasure.
Yeah, who can pass? And I grieve the least. So it's as if God's saying, in my mind, God is saying, well, choose the next one. And I'm counting, you know, Gemma, Earl, my siblings. And I couldn't come up with one. Because there's only one of them, one of each.
Right.
But I am reasoning that the way life is, we will be here again.
Right.
And I couldn't deal with it.
Right.
Couldn't deal with it.
When we come back, we look more specifically at how, you know, what was the most painful of all those deaths that you have experienced and how you were able to cope with it. We're talking to the man, you know him as the minister, but we're talking to the man, Andy Manzano. When we come back, we look a little bit at his life and how his life currently reflects the life of Jesus.
Gentlemen, need an evening to get away with your significant lady? We've got the perfect getaway plan just for you both. An exotic evening at Cara Suites Hotel. Just for $500, you and yours can enjoy an evening of glamour, elegance, and romance, along with exquisite dining together. Beat the Valentine rush and join us on February 10 from 6 p.m. at Cara Suites Hotel, Claxton Bay. Every love story can be beautiful, but yours can be out of this world.
The Preacher and His Pain. We are here with Pastor Andy Manzano as we continue our series, Coping with Loss, and he has just begun to share his experience, having lost several persons in his family over a space of 7 years. Pastor, of all those individuals, how many persons you said?
9 and 7 years.
9 persons in 7 years, right.
89 to about 94.
If you look back over those years, which of those experiences were the toughest for you?
The experience of loss is different,
Right.
in all situations. There is a unique pain to each one.
Right,
I guess it's because of the difference of relation.
of course.
I think the loss that still pains me. I carry it
Right.
more than the others. Would be my mother, and she was the first to pass.
How did she pass?
My mother got. She had a stroke one time. She had a second one, and I think I did the third one. She was taken to the hospital. Actually, I took her myself. I carried her in my arms
Right.
to the hospital, and she passed while she was there.
Right. How old was she by then?
My mother was in, it was 60s,
Right.
62, around there. But there's something unique about her death, because mother.
Right.
And I remember some years ago, it was Mother's Day. We were having a family function. My aunt from the States was here, and we were all invited. We haven't seen her for some years, and I was driving, going to this function. It was Mother's Day. And this song is very popular, Boys to Men, Mama. So I had it in my vehicle, playing, driving. And I have a love for music, and so it's there, and I'm singing and going, and while driving, I broke, I broke tears, and Mother's Day is painful.
Wow. Still is?
Every Mother's
You gotta
Day.
be kidding me.
It's
Wow.
painful.
And she passed how long ago?
Yeah, 1989.
You still feel that?
I remember. And sometimes Christmas. Christmas is, because nobody bakes like Mommy.
I tell you.
I remember the days, you beating the butter and the sugar and the grinding those. So that's.
Sorry.
I still carry that. Yeah.
We have been to many funerals, and I'm sure you have been exposed to the level of reaction, the screams, the tears that flow. And you must admit it's a different kind of pain from even losing a house, a car, and maybe other valuables in your life. Seeing that you have lost, and you have lost so many persons, it might be a difficult question to answer, I must admit, but how do you define that pain? What kind of pain it is? How do you go about trying to make sense out of it?
Yeah, my profession sometimes drives me or pulls me into a zone where I try to describe stuff.
Right.
And I want to believe, my coining of the pain of death and coping with death, this ultimate pain
Right.
of losing a loved one, I define it as trying to make sense out of two tenses at the same time. The tense of past and present, which the human cannot resolve.
Right.
How do you say, or how do you understand the statement, she is dead?
I hear you.
How can your mind reconcile that?
Right.
Because there are two tenses at the same time.
I hear that.
Is present, dead, past. The person resides in you from your memory,
I tell you.
but the person is absent from your experience.
I tell you.
So I want to believe that's one of the problems of death,
Right.
that the person is and is not
It's not at the same time.
at the same time.
Wow. Somebody's listening, and perhaps they have
and I'm sure you have been approached by quite a number of persons. Pastor, this person died, or this friend of mine has experienced loss, and I don't know what to say to that individual. What do you say to somebody who has lost maybe a husband or a wife or a daughter? You have been through that. Is it always right to have the right words and you feel powerless if you don't? What do you, if somebody comes to you and says, Pastor, I don't know what to say, what do you say to somebody who does not know what to say?
Well, most people would tell you, if not all, that in those experiences, it may just be the right thing to not say.
That's right.
Because there is no right word
I tell you.
to tell somebody when they're experiencing grief, especially grief by death.
Right.
There really is no. We want to have the magic statement. We want to tell somebody something that will fix it, and it is not really fixable. That experience can only be fixed by God.
I tell you.
So I advise, speaking to my students, I tell them, if you're talking to somebody who lost somebody in death, then tell them, I am here for you.
Right.
I am praying for you.
Right.
If you need me, just call. But don't try to fix it.
Right.
Because sometimes we try to fix it, and when you tell somebody, I know what you feel,
I tell you.
is not true. Is not true. You don't know. You don't know. And by trying to say the right thing, sometimes we say the wrong thing.
Right.
At my mother's funeral, somebody told me something that I felt the entire earth open under me. And it was on a religious statement. And I wish they did not come to the funeral. Because they said something that was very insensitive.
Right.
And when people they're going through grief, their emotions are very, very fragile. Very fragile. And in my own experience, my mother, my sister, my wife and I, we had an adopted boy, and he died while I worked in Tobago. And from that experience, it is nice to sometimes step out of yourself and
Right.
look at yourself going through it. And I realize I want to believe I am precise on this, that when people are in grief, they go through partial insanity. I believe that. You're not functioning. You are not functioning at normal level.
Wow.
And not for the grace of God, we wouldn't make it. In fact, I refer to the text in Isaiah 53, I think it's 4. He had borne our grief and carried our sorrows, that Jesus has taken the bigger portion of grief from us when he died. Else we wouldn't survive.
Right.
That's how terrible grief is.
Does grief have an expiry date?
No. I think what we do is we compartmentalize things in our memory.
Right.
We put it into a case to go on.
How will you therefore tell somebody who perhaps has not dealt with the pain of loss? Somebody has lost somebody who is very dear to them, and they just can't deal with it, so they don't confront it. What would you tell a person like that?
In my experience as a pastor, counselor, we learn that grief has stages.
Right.
It starts off with shock,
Right.
and you go to anger,
Right.
you have guilt,
Sometimes
you have
denial.
depression, you have denial, yeah. Well, when you have shock, if you go into denial, then you don't go through the process.
Okay.
All
That's
right? And what happened is this is like something that is bottled. And if not handled properly, when it comes out, The person can have a nervous breakdown. They can, lose their reasoning. Grief it's painful, but the experience of grief when we have loss is actually a healing process.
Therapeutic.
It's therapeutic, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Pastor, we're just about coming to the end of this program, but just want to ask you this question, because there are people who are looking at this who either is or are going through what we are going through, what you have been through, and or perhaps knows somebody who has been through and they felt like quitting the job, quitting life, because it's too much to handle. And you just have a few seconds to cause them to hold on to life. What would you say during those few seconds, just to make them think again of the decision of quitting?
When grief, loss, pain, bereavement, they are connected to an experience that we have. And we hold on to our treasure. When we lose our treasure, we are trying to live in the past. We're holding on to something that is behind us. We need to embrace the experience of having a loved one. But life offers us hope. And this hope is centered in God. God has never promised that our best is behind. He has never promised. Our best is yet ahead of us. So even in pain, we need to continue and allow God to heal. And not only that, it is through our experience, we are given the strength and the know-how to help somebody else. Like Jesus, Thomas asked Jesus, show me your scars. It is people in pain who most often are equipped to help people in pain.
I'm not going to ask you that, because I wanted to help. We want you to help us dispense with the myth that pastors don't experience the same kind of pain or the intensity of the pain that others may experience. Yet, what you just said is that sometimes the pain helps you to minister more effectively. How true has that been for you?
I am experienced personally with certain things, and theologically knowing certain things from scripture. I am more objective when I'm dealing with people. So I don't see myself as telling somebody they should not feel. Or they should not bother. Or I even tell someone, like I was counseling someone recently, a young friend in Guyana who lost her mother. I said to her, to be honest, she said, Pastor, I wanted to go away. I said, it doesn't go away. But God gives you the strength to bear it, to cope with it. But to be honest, it would be untrue to tell somebody that one day it will go away. Because life brings us to the place, like I said, Mother's Day, the trigger, it brings you back. But because of coping, you learn to deal with it for this moment.
And sometimes when it goes away, it could be a sign of guilt. I mean, it can make you feel guilty that it has gone away. Pastor, I want to thank you so much for sharing excerpts of your own experience, if only to help us to deal with pain. And even preachers have pain. Two texts come to mind. Jesus is touched with the feelings, not by, but with the feelings of our infirmities. And then Isaiah reminds us that he has given us the tongue of the learned, so that we would know how to speak a word in season to them that are weary. So perhaps God has carried you through this pain so that you can help somebody else cope with their own pain. Thank you so much for joining with us. And if you are experiencing pain even as we speak, remember, there's always JC 24/7.
Thank you for viewing JC 24/7. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and remember to inspire your living as you prepare for heaven. You can get it all on JC 24/7.